and welcome everyone to this talk today on the future of clean air in Bangkok. We're very excited to be hosting such esteemed guests, and we're really looking forward to the conversations to come. So my name is Mackenzie King with the Sustainability and Entrepreneurship Center of the Satsin School of Management, and I will be your moderator today. Satsin is a leading institution in Thailand, training the next generation of business leaders and driving transformation towards sustainability through entrepreneurship. We know that now sustainability is not a choice, it is an imperative and fundamental to the future of business. In this fireside chat today, we'll be exploring the structural challenges that contribute to Bangkok's air pollution and the policy solutions that may serve to benefit people, industry, and the environment alike. It is our hope that by learning from each other here on this panel, that future-proofed solutions can be uncovered and mutualistic collaborations founded in order to solve this pervasive and dangerous problem. We're joined today by an incredible array of speakers, including experts, innovators, and public officials. I will start off by introducing Winarin Lilitanan, our opening speaker for today. Winarin is co-founder of the Thailand Clean Air Network, a citizen-driven volunteer group created to support policy solutions for clean air. Thailand CAN has drafted and submitted the first citizen-led clean air bill to Thai Parliament. Winarin is a senior consultant at the World Bank, where she leads corporate and project financing transactions in developing countries and provides advisory services to various government counterparts. She's also authored the World Bank's SME assessment report and the first white paper on ESG risks for the Thai banking sector. For our panelists, we are very honored to welcome Ajahn Chhatchat Sitipun, our very recently elected Bangkok Governor. Congratulations, Ajahn. Ajahn Chhatchat assumed office just this past May, and his platform includes over 200 policy changes that seek to make Bangkok a livable city for everyone. Governor Chhatchat was a structural engineer in the United States before coming to Chulalongkorn University as an engineering professor. He served as Minister of Transport from 2012 to 2014, well known for his endorsement of public transportation. He later joined Q House PCL as a CEO before returning to politics. Ajahn Chhatchat has both a degree in civil engineering and an MBA from Chulalongkorn University. He also has a master's in civil engineering from MIT and a PhD in civil engineering from the University of Illinois Urbana-Champaign. Our next panelist is Sarawan Chuchat, founder, CEO, Chief Sustainability Officer at eTran, an electric mobility startup focused on e-motorcycles. Suranan is a two-time Red Dot winner, receiving the Red Dot Best of the Best Design Award in 2012, and more recently, his electric motorcycle received Red Dot's Innovation Product Award in 2020. Congratulations to you. And last but very much not least, I would like to offer a warm welcome to our final panelist, Mr. Majun. Majun is an internationally renowned environmentalist and founder and director of the Institute of Public and Environmental Affairs, one of China's most dynamic environmental NGOs. The focus of this institution is to promote transparency around pollution issues in China. Majun has developed the China Pollution Map, China's first public environmental database, and the Blue Map, a mobile app that helps the public see and report environmental violations. He was awarded the Ramon Magsaysay Award in 2009 for his solution to China's water crisis. And he also received the Goldman Environmental Prize in 2012 for his work on water and air pollution. We're very honored to have you here today. The format of today's session is that of a guided dialogue. We have amazing panelists and limited time, so we're asking everyone to politely try and stick to short answers of 3 to 5 minutes. Surely, Governor, you might have a leg up on everyone, well prepared for this after your numerous debates this past election cycle. But please do forgive me if I jump in to move things along ever. We will have just 1 hour with Ajahn Chhatchat and want to ensure some open discussion between panelists towards the end of the hour. After the first hour, we will open for questions from the audience and for the panelists that are able to stay on. For the audience, if you do have questions, you can put them in the chat and we will try our best to integrate them into the program, or you can wait till the end during the Q&A to ensure your question gets asked. With that, I would like to hand it off to you, P. Wina, and you may take it away with the introduction to the landscape, if you will, of air pollution in Thailand.
Great. Thank you so much, Mac. Can you hear me all right?
Yep, we can hear you just fine, P. Wina.
Okay, great. Thank you so much. It's completely honored to have such a distinguished panelists for this event. let me just quickly do my quick blurb to introduction about air pollution in Thailand, what's happening in terms of the clean air legislation and what's coming up thereafter. As many of you may know, air pollution in Thailand has been quite a problem. In northern Thailand, it's been a problem actually for the last 15 years. It's in a really dire state. In Bangkok, it got pretty bad around end of 2018, I think was probably when it got kind of 17, 18 onwards. Things got pretty bad. Now, if you look at the data, how bad is it? Based on the latest Air Quality Life Index from the University of Chicago, based on the study, they did a fact sheet for Thailand that was issued in March of this year. So based on 2020 data for Thailand, the average particle matter 2.5 levels is close to about 5 times what the WHO deems to be levels that are safe for human health, okay? Comparatively, regionally, how does Thailand stack up? They did a comparison amongst the 10 Southeast Asian, the ASEAN countries. Thailand ranks about the 4th. In some periods of the year, Chiang Mai, Mae Hong Son up north, Chiang Rai has ranked as one of the worst cities in the world in terms of air quality. So it's pretty dire. In terms of average life lost, we stand around 2 years, but there's regional variations, right? So if you're in northern Thailand, the numbers gets as bad as up to almost 3 years. What's also daunting is based on some reports that this University of Chicago did a couple of years ago, Thailand actually was highlighted as the 7th worst polluting country in the world. Okay, there's 190 odd countries in the world. So that's pretty bad, actually. And that was startling when I saw that data. So that's the situation in terms of where things stand. And I think, if you look at developments in terms of, how other countries have dealt with air pollution, I mean, it's not all doom and gloom because, there's successful cases that have happened in developed countries, be it the US or the United Kingdom. But also in our neighboring countries, China has done phenomenally well. I believe since 2013-14 onwards, and Marjorie could probably clarify this for me much better, the particle matter PM 2.5 levels have actually plummeted by 40%, which is phenomenal. Even closer to home, if you look at Indonesia, Indonesia had started really pushing on clean air, particularly in Jakarta. They started the movements about the same time as we did here in Bangkok, around 2017-18. And some of you may have seen the developments in the paper. And that was in September of last year. Actually, civil society actually won a lawsuit against the government for not, taking care of public health, right? So they've actually moved mountains in that level. I mean, obviously nobody wants to go down the judicial path if there are alternative paths on this, right? Because at the end of the day, this is something that affects all of us, right? I mean, what is the right to breathe? It's a right to life itself, right? So that's just a kind of a snapshot of where things stand. Now, here in Thailand, what we've done, the Thailand Clean Air Network, we are a group of active volunteers who joined together around 2017-18, really. Because we saw that the problem wasn't actually being resolved, we understood the gravity and the complexity of this issue. And we looked around and we really did not see it being tackled correctly. Ultimately, air pollution is a deep structural problem. There is really no one entity within the policy-making realm who's fully responsible for it. And therefore, it's a bit like a hot potato that's being tossed around, which is why unless and until the roles and responsibilities are properly delineated and the incentive structures are properly lined up, this issue will forever be here, unfortunately. And so, so what is this legislation? What it is we drafted a legislation on the basis of a lot of knowledge that's being accumulated. Just taking one step back, the Thailand Clean Air Network has a multitude of different people of different professions. We've got a lot of environmental lawyers, we've got lawyers from various fields. We have environmental economists in our group. We've got medical doctors, we've got air pollution specialists, we've got mass communication experts. We have quite a mixture in terms of disciplines, right? And what we've done is actually decided to bring together our collective knowledge plus a lot of the field work that we've done on the ground, and pull together that knowledge. And we've also studied a lot of legislation across the world and tried to find and develop something that is not a cut and paste, but it is actually bringing together the collective knowledge from different countries, but marrying it into the Thai context, right? So in short and long of it is bringing the concept of what you would have really in terms of what an environmental protection agency in terms of its operations within the current construct of Thailand's current bureaucracy. And that's important. It really marries the key focus of this legislation is to bring the issue of environment and health together, because ultimately you cannot have good health if you don't have a decent environment. It improves effectiveness and legal enforcement, right, of this entire issue, because it brings to bear the issue of policy setting, regulation, and legal enforcement. It does so by actually bringing co-management, and this co-management means co-management of civil society to get together with the key policymakers. If you take your hat off, we are all part of civil society, right? And it is civil society members who are equipped and trained in the various fields to be involved in this. It protects every citizen's right to breathe clean air. It accords this right to every citizen and therefore establishes the obligation of the state to protect this right. And it has information dissemination and right to know. So as a citizen, if you're affected by this, there are means for you to get the right information to deal with it. And another important aspect of this legislation is that it is a legislation, it's not a command and control. It is a legislation that brings together incentive structures, and specifically economic incentive structures, because at the end of the day, hand to heart, we are all polluters at some point, but at different levels, right? And so it brings together the concept of a polluter pay policy, but it tries to, and I will wrap up very quickly, what it does is it brings all this to bear and finds a way to incentivize the various economic actors to do what is required in order to transition into a greener, cleaner environment for all of us. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Piwina. Yeah, it really is important to remember that civil society is not a necessary adversary of industry or of government, and bringing together those incentive structures is so important. And viewing this from a One Health lens is all the more critical in the case of the air that we breathe. So going off of that, I would really like to ask one of the first questions to Mr. Majun. Mr. Majun, could you please talk us through your key motivations behind creating a platform to facilitate public participation in environmental governance? Could you please provide us with a brief overview of the Blue Map app? Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. King. And first, I would like to thank for your kind invitation for me to join this discussion. I'm very honored and to join Bernardine and Governor Siripont and Sonoran in this discussion. As Bernardine put it, China has worked on air pollution control over the past 10 years and made some progress, but that's with the backdrop of the very severe air pollution. When Bernardine talked about the pollution in Thailand, China, we used to have very, very poor air quality, and the ambient air, outdoor air pollution is attributed to as the reason for premature death up to 1 million every year. So from 2013 to now, we have made some progress. Beijing's PM 2.5, the fine particles, have dropped from 90 micrograms to 33 last year. And we believe that from the very beginning, we believe that the issue cannot be resolved without extensive public participation, because it's quite related to very complicated industrial and urban pollution. So when Beijing and the surrounding region suffer from long stretch of smoggy days in 2011, we have drafted a blue sky roadmap. So basically listed 4 steps. The first step is to monitor and disclose. And the second step is to provide health alert to the public and build awareness among the citizens. And then the third step is to identify the sources of pollution. And the fourth is to work on emission reduction step by step. So talking about challenges, our first challenge is the air quality data. At the beginning, in the very incomplete, we only provide daily average to the public, and it doesn't include PM 2.5 and ozone. So we developed the air quality transparency index to promote that to happen. So 2013, very happy to see China started monitoring and disclose PM 2.5. And I still remember the first month with the revelation of a appalling pollution. It has aroused national attention and triggered the National Clean Air Action Plan. And the second challenge is some of the emitters are too big and too powerful to be supervised, even by some local agencies. So with that in mind, we, along with 25 other NGOs, we launched the Total Transparency Initiative, calling for the real-time disclosure of the automatic native online monitoring data. And thousands upon thousands of major emitters actually have installed those auto monitors, but their data were not accessible to the public. So we launched that initiative, and very happy to see the central government responded in a positive way and required this to happen from 2014. So when this data have been published on the website of 29 different provincial websites, we decided to tap into the mobile internet to build the blue map because we trust that it's much easier for people to check this on their cell phone. So not just to help access the monitoring data, but also to provide alert and health suggestions. And the third challenge is our citizens' capacity gap is there. They cannot understand the data, especially easily understand the online monitoring data of all these major emitters. Air emitters need to give their data to the public every hour, but the readings of sulfur, of nitrogen, of particulates, and others are a bit too complicated. So we decided to visualize through our blue map, basically just to very clearly color those violators in blue, in the red color, so that they can be very easily identified. And then it's very easy also for people to share that on social media, filing the so-called micro-reporting. So the key success factors, talking about that, I believe is for the Blue Map app to facilitate positive interactions between stakeholders, including, of course, the government agencies, the citizens, but also the corporations. Just give one case, there was a listed company in Shandong, which is extremely large and state-owned enterprise. Every hour, it was not in compliance with the standards. But when we check with them, they hung up the phone. They don't want to respond. They did not want to respond. But then our local users, the Blue Map users, continue to use our app to share this violation records on social media, on Chinese Twitter, and one day we got the phone call we have been invited to to have the face-to-face meeting with the director of the Shandong Provincial EPB chief, and the director opened his opening remarks went like, we have 100 million people in this province, burning 400 million tons of coal, very, very heavy industry. And now I need to deal with the PM 2.5, but I need people to join the efforts, but I hope they join based on data, based on monitoring. So they decided that it's to build all this Twitter account, Chinese Twitter account, Weibo account, to follow all this reporting based on the blue map. So hundreds upon hundreds of major iron, steel, cement, coal power, and petrochemical and chemical companies. I'm talking about the case. When we met with the director of the provincial EPB, and they decided to follow all this reporting, and the Shandong Iron Steel finally, have been required to shut down 3 shaft furnaces, and which is in bad violations, and that cut the emission, more than 2,600 tons of sulfur and 400 tons of PM 2.5. And this is not just benefit to the city, but to the whole airshed, including my city, Beijing. So basically over the past 9 years, China managed to cut its air pollution in most of the major regions by more than half in just this short period of time. We still have a long way to go, but some of the progress I can put it's historical.
Wow.
Thank you.
Thank you for sharing. And I appreciate even the note on airshed. I never thought about it that way, but yeah. Win and I were talking the other day, and yes, we're all in the same stratosphere. I think that is something that really comes full circle, is that this is an issue that is transboundary and it's important, and this is not something that is isolated. It's something that affects all the different value chains and many different stakeholders. Thank you so much for sharing your challenges and that really amazing success story. If I could move on to Ajahn Chat, I would really like to ask, could you please talk us through your clean air policy that you have laid out already, and potentially include your implementation challenges that you foresee and how you plan to overcome them?
Okay, thank you, Kun Mac. Thank you. And thank you, Kun Majun, for your kind elaboration of the China program, and it's very impressive. I just got elected to become the governor of Bangkok just beginning of this month. And I think during the campaign, the issues that the voter most concerned about environmental is PM 2.5. So it's a good news. And I think right now we have a political mandate that we have to tackle these issues. So hopefully it will have some effect on our Clean Air Act too, with people concerned about these issues, and we got very strong political mandate. Let me talk about the challenges we have first. So when I lay out the policy, maybe can explain these challenges. So I think there are maybe 3 major challenges that I found. The first one, I think the problem of the PM 2.5 problem in Thailand, it is a seasonal problem. Usually it begins in November and then we end in March. So if you can be patient enough, if the politician can be patient enough for 5 months and can resist all the blame and all, it will be over in 5 months, and then it will come back again. But it's not the continuous problem. So this caused the solution. Sometimes the solution is just to be patient and let it subside in few months. But I think right now we cannot do that because we have a political mandate to do it. So I think we need a strong strategy to attack the problem, no matter if we'll subside in 5 months and then come back again. So I think this is the challenge that we have to change the mindset of the the policymakers. I think the second one would be, I think we don't have the information enough about what's really happening in Bangkok or in Thailand. We have some research about the sources of PM 2.5 done by AIT, the Asian Institute of Technology, maybe about 10 years ago, about the sources of the PM 2.5. But I don't think we have the elaborate research program to identify the sources of the problems. So mostly we have some evidence that there is PM 2.5, but we don't have a clear the sources, where it come from, and how should we attack the source of the PM 2.5. And I think that the last challenges would be, there are so many organizations that are responsible for solving these problems. I mean, for us, BMA, right? BMA is Bangkok Metropolitan Administration. So we are responsible for certain things. There are Ministry of Natural Resources and Environment. There are National Environmental Board. There are Ministry of Transport, who take care of all the combustible engine vehicle, and also Ministry of Industry, who responsible for the factories. So I think there are so many different organizations who are responsible for parts of the solution, and no one have a overall responsibility or have a good control of the situation. So I think we have to maybe try to organize or try to coordinate all these organizations to act together and solve the problem. So there are three major challenges. So I think for our policy that I declared during the election, I think there are 4 things that we need to do. One is we have to the elimination of the source of the PM 2.5. And as I said, since we don't have so there are four dimensions. One is elimination. Second one is alleviation, try to alleviate the effect of the PM 2.5. The third one will be protection. And the fourth one would be detection and prediction. So I think that there are 4 dimensions that the BMA or Bangkok Metropolitan Administration have to do. For elimination, I think we focus mainly first on the combustible engine for the car, which I think some research said it maybe account for up to 40 or 50% of PM 2.5 in Bangkok. So I think so we have to be serious about controlling the exhaust fume for these vehicles, and also from the factories. So we may have to do the same as Kun Chun mentioned about the monitoring the fume from the factories. And also the most difficult one would be the burn of the agricultural waste. And many of them didn't come from Bangkok, it come from other provinces, and the wind blew it in. So I think all this we have to be serious and then tackle the sources of the PM 2.5. So the second one will be to alleviation. I think there are some way to alleviate the effect of the PM 2.5, such as we plan to build more trees, create green spaces in Bangkok, and make it happen like a barrier for the PM 2.5. And then I think we try to create a low emission zone in certain area and try to promote using the public transport and using less of the internal combustible engine vehicle. And then I think the third one will be protection. So we need to provide protection equipment for the vulnerable citizens like the elderly or the young. We should give them the mask if they cannot afford to get one, and then provide some safety zone in the school and in hospitals. And the last one would be to get better information about how to detect and predict the PM 2.5. So we might follow the Taiwanese model, installing the sensors around the Bangkok area, and then get the mapping of the situation, the current situation of PM 2.5. Also, we try to improve the capabilities to predict or to forecast the situation of PM 2.5, so people can prepare accordingly. So I think there are many things that is in our plan and the pipeline, so we have to implement it as soon as possible. But as I said, we have a political mandate to do it, and I think we start implementing certain programs already. Okay, that's it. Thank you, Matt.
Thank you, Ajahn. Thank you. It's really good to hear that you feel that the political mandate is absolutely apparent, that it's there. But certainly, I think you have your work cut out for you on breaking down some of those governmental silos. But if you don't mind, if I ask one short follow-up,
Okay.
is how do you plan to break down those silos within these other ministries that you were talking about, whether it's the Ministry of Natural Resources, Ministry of Transport?
Okay.
How do you get at that?
Yeah, thank you. It's a good question. I think we use digital or maybe like technology to penetrate all these silos. But first of all, we have to penetrate our silos first. Even in the BMA, we have so many silos inside. We have so many different divisions or different districts that maybe they don't communicate with others. So we start creating the platform that we can share information among each different departments. Like now, we use a platform we call the traffic from do just to integrate information among divisions, and it worked very well, and now we start to extending this platform to department outside BMA, like maybe the MBA, the Metropolitan Electricity Authority. So I think we start using the technology or digital platform to connect the silos, and I think this will help. So the first thing we do is doing the open Bangkok. Like we open data on this platform and we share this with different other departments, and hopefully this platform can penetrate through the silos and we can share more information, and then we can have more cooperation in the future.
Thank you. Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense to have an integrated knowledge management platform. And I do have to say, thank you, Ajahn, because I know how many people are so excited about your policies and really encouraged by your work. So I do hope that kind of platform that encourages data disclosure can work across ministries and then hopefully work into the industrial sector as well. And on that note, I would like to direct my next question to Kun Earth, because eTran has successfully managed to engage in business partnerships with some very large Thai corporations. Do you think you could please share more about the nature of these collaborations and how you're working? Please walk the audience through the business case for clean air practices from an investor's perspective. Thank you.
Okay. Actually, would like to thank you to Ajahn Chachat and his team during his campaign. The first mayor of the city that's used electric vehicles and promoting duration. I think that's reflect a lot. And actually, when eTran started like 7 years ago, it's happened when I was sitting on a public motorcycle taxi, or we can call wind motorcycle in Thai, right? And I feel like very bad, when you smell a bad air, even not from your bikes, but other people who share the same road, also exhaust a lot, and it's a lot of noise on the street. When I mostly use personal cars, so one day when sit on the passenger seat of the public motorcycle taxi, then it's not just a bad smell, bad noise, but it's not comfortable at all, because that is a personal bike, not a bike that designed for a public transportation. And I realized that, in the developed countries, in the city that, we love to go to travel, the better qualities of public transportation can reflect many things. So I start to study about how can I do something cleaner solution. What's the ideas that we can do, and I think the first thing is the cost of ownership. Back in that 7 years, EV is a new thing. So the first thing pop up in everyone's mind is about the cost. Will it getting more expensive? The accessible to energy, where can I charge? Leasing company, do they have the finance to support the electric motorcycle? Yes or no? And second is on the performance. In Thailand and in Southeast Asia, the largest market of motorcycle is 125cc, which can ride up to 100 km per hour or 120 km per hour. At that time, no technology in the world that can go that fast. EV has been boom in China, which a smaller size of motor we use there. People didn't ride that fast like Thailand. And we must share the road with the bus, the super fancy super car and things in there. So people who sitting on the two-wheelers need some kind of the same technology that ICE motorcycle can do, which is fast. And second, I think how can we manage the energy? Because if you run ICE, you have a gas station, you have petrol station, but when it's time for EV, where to charge? And back in that day, there's nowhere to charge, And people who ride the two-wheelers, like lots of them cannot charge at home because they stay in not the single house, but maybe in the flat, in condominium and things like that didn't have a charger. So to build this business, it's not just create a two-wheelers EV and say, yeah, I'm gonna sell, but it's also need to create the infrastructure as well to make sure that the product can have the charging station or swapping station. And the last thing I think we can see the trend of investment are shifting from around the world. People put more money into the ESG investment. So rather than invest in oil and gas company, they move to the company that can represent the ESG strategy clearly. So one thing that eTrans start is not just to build a two-wheelers and sell, but we try to think how to make this business become more sustainable and also align with all E, S, and G. So every kilometer that normally the motorcycle ride generates like 45 grams of carbon dioxide. It sounds a little, right, per 1 kilo, just 45 grams. But imagine we have more than 22 million motorcycles in Thailand. Imagine how many kilometers per year that we run. And especially just in Bangkok, we have millions of them are in Bangkok, share the same road, make the air very dirty, right? So when we put all the information together, I think we are delivering the value of clean, the value of efficiency, and also the value of equitability. For clean, of course, we build EV, but not just the EV, but the supply chain as well. How to transform the existing manufacturing into the cleaner one. There are lots of waste, a lot of energy used in the manufacturing, a lot of petrochemicals in plastic building, things that need to change. Second is about the efficient. If I build like personal bikes and it stay at home, so it will not take out any carbon from the air, right? So we target to do something like commercial bikes. User who ride like 200 kilometers per day, 300 kilometers per day, that guy are our market. That guy use a lot. So it can extremely reduce the carbon fastest. And the last one is equitability. I don't want to see EV as a gadget for affordable people. It's look like rich man toys in some way somehow of EV, but how we can make everyone who are delivering economic every day to become the carbon hero. How can we convert those guys who are working on the bike to become the climate hero, right? So we are launching the package rental. Like today, the sharing economy is proven in many business, but it's never happened in two-wheelers before. So we launched the rental program to our riders, and it works very well. Some of corporate partners, like on my background, is the delivery app called Robinhood from Siam Commercial Banks. They set a very exciting target about EV usage on their fleets. And also we are seeing more international companies pushing the EV transformation strategies aggressively as well. So I think to use an EV is not an option anymore. It must be the only one condition that delivery company, the last mile company, or a public transportation company should turn to EV immediately. to start creating the impact and, make the business more responsible, not just for the, shareholders, but for society, for people who share the same air. And it's time to take the responsible of what you are doing. So eTran today, we are run by the theme of drive the better world. Whatever we do, just make the world become the better place. Yes, thank you.
Thank you so much, Kun Earth. Thank you so much for integrating all those different aspects. It really does seem like the future is in this ESG investment, and especially that movement in Southeast Asia, especially with the investment there, but to also make this about, inclusivity and allowing that kind of climate action to happen at every level. Level might not be the right even word, but to allow everyone to be able to be a part of this transformational change. That's really inspiring. Thank you so much. And on that note of having that relationship with industry and finding this business case for clean air, if I could direct a question again to Ma Jun, I was wondering if you could share any case where businesses that you've worked with have really seen the value of the environmental governance that you brought to the table through the use of the Blue Map app.
Thank you. Thank you for the question. And yes, we environmental data, all this monitoring and based on monitoring can be quite helpful, quite useful. Although at the beginning, when the enforcement was weak and many of the corporations were not in compliance, we play the role as a independent third-party supervisor, but increasingly the business corporations, they can understand that it's actually can be helpful to them, to the multinationals and major local brands who sourcing who have a vast supply chain in China. China is the factory of the world, so there's a lot of foreign business purchasing in China, and we also have big local supply chain, and when they finally understand that it's actually can be very helpful to them to fulfill their commitment they made first on the compliance of local environmental standards and on the local emission control, and then on climate change. So they understand that this can be very helpful. Before they need to spend a lot of resources to send auditors on the ground to check all this, all their suppliers, to audit their suppliers. It's a kind of a cat and mouse game that they could never win. But then, with all this monitoring going on, it can help them to shortlist and to identify the gaps quite easily. At the beginning, our data is very limited. 2006, when we first built the pollution map, we can only gather 2,000 records of violations. But today, that number is over 2.3 million records of violations, and the corporations, we built a mechanism which can help all this managers. All the managers got a push notification on their cell phone or in their inbox, when their suppliers have negative or sometimes positive records coming from official sources. And many of them drive their suppliers to also access this service. So based on agreed upon agreement they made, toward the solution of the violations, it become more automated for all this process to be going on. So far we have helped more than 17,000 suppliers to openly address their violations through our our automated process. And then, many of them also choose to use our tools to measure and disclose their local and also carbon emission. This helped the suppliers just to secure their contracts, to build better relationship with the brands who source from them. Also on the green finance side, the banks have also been required by the central government to do green banking. So there's a policy there. So we have built the so-called dynamic environmental performance assessment tool, which we use that to color code more than 10 million companies in China based on their performance. So ever since the outbreak of the pandemic in the year 2020, we have helped major banks in China to run through more than 300,000 companies who want to borrow money from them. We help them to go through the due diligence based on big data. On the listed companies, we also help them to fulfill reporting requirements. Finally, on the state-owned enterprise, the central government most recently have required them to do a lot of ESG type of governance and management. So they approached us, and government agencies. Our government agencies. I mean, I was very, very impressed by the Governor Zhang's remarks. And in China, we also have the government agencies. They also vow to make their cities more livable and communities more sustainable, and they want social stability. So they also hope they also got more interested in working with civil society organizations like us, who use data as a way to engage. So all this are based on the digital solutions, which are more cost effective and wouldn't put too much extra cost on the business. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you so much. Yeah, the violations on public health are happening whether or not we know about it. It's happening whether or not we have this industry disclosed data, but what's managed is, or sorry, what's as the adage goes, what is measured is managed. So I think that has really, come through in what you've been saying, Mr. Majun. I do have one question from the audience, maybe before we move to just an interrelated discussion with the panelists. This is to Ajahn Chat, which is asking specifically if vehicle emissions is one of the major sources of PM 2.5, what should we do about that electric transformation? And I think I would like to even second that question with, how do we sustainably scale the way that the BTS and the MRT are operating so that we can have a more equitable and profitable public transportation system and reduce the cars on the road? Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Matt. I think the transportation is a major cause of the PM 2.5 in Bangkok. So I think we have to promote. I think you mentioned electric vehicle too, right? Yeah. So,
that's
so I think as a BMA, we have to promote the ecosystem that promote the use. I mean, at BMA, we are not involved with the taxing or other things that we can provide, like charging stations, So at least make it more convenient for people to use EV. So I think the BMA will try our best to create an ecosystem that help, and not only for the vehicle, but for motorcycle, as Kun Saranan mentioned too. I think there's a big time. There are millions of motorcycles that can be transformed to EV. And we start to see the battery swapping station in many locations. It's very convenient. And for the public transport, I think when you mentioned about MRT or BTS, right? And we still need the feeder that connect people from the main line to their home. And I think this feeder will play important roles in promoting the public transportation. So I think that the public transportation has to be affordable right now, I think many of the mass transit is quite expensive comparing to the wages of Thai workers, and should be convenient too, right? In the way you connect it. So mainly we invest a lot on the main line, but we forgot about how to connect from the main line to the house or to the destination. So I think BMA has to promote the feeder that can connect from the main line to the destination with efficiently and the affordable price. Regarding the price of the transportation, the mass transit, I think we have to look in the overall picture. I think we can do only BMA be responsible for only BTS, but other lines are responsible by the Ministry of Transport. So I think we have to have the long-term strategy to set up the fare that is affordable for all. And with an affordable price, I think we can attract more people to use the public transport, and then we can create more demand, and then I think it can be breaking even easier. So I think we have to look at the strategy and work hand in hand with other authorities too. But I think the only way that we can reduce the fume, the exhaust from the vehicle is to use the public transport.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate that. So for our last 9 minutes with you at Untitled Chat, I do want to open this up to our other panelists. If our panelists would like to ask any questions or have any open discussion, I will gladly sit back for a moment.
Untitled Chat, it's fantastic that you are addressing vehicle pollution. But I also, and I know that another area that you've focused on is industrial, which is huge in Bangkok, right? There's over 100,000 factories in Thailand, of which 50,000 is actually located within provinces close to Bangkok.
Yeah, there's 6,000 in Bangkok itself.
Yeah, it's a lot.
A lot.
I guess the most jarring question is about data on industrial pollution, because we don't have emissions inventory in Thailand that's publicly disclosed, and we don't have the pollutant release and transfer registrar law or anything that requires that. And I was aware that what had been done, that there had been tests done where 1,000 industries have been asked about, are they open to having that information publicly available? And actually they are.
Yeah.
Because it's a simple point. If this information isn't out there, it actually opens a kind of gray area for payments of money under the table, right? But if you know exactly what the guidelines are and you keep within that, everybody knows, and from a business perspective, you can actually manage your costs better. So I guess the hardest part, and I would love for something like Blue Map to be launched in Thailand. The question is, how do we get industrial pollution data? Because it is in the hands of the Ministry of Industry. And we'll love your insights on that.
I think I just informed that they just have a new law coming out on the 10th of June that require all the factory to install the measurement of the pollution from the exhaust in the factories. It has to be done within 1 year from now. So at least there's some progress in the regulation required. But I think as a factory is in Bangkok, we may have the authority to check the quality of the air that released from this factory. So I think we can implement or require them to release the data and make it public, to be like open data, and then do the real-time measurement of what they're releasing to the air. So I think we have a policy to implement that. I think hopefully we can start with certain factories and do the program and then do the open data. So from my experience, I think there are two ways to tackle this, right? You do the hard power, you use laws and regulation and then try to enforce it, and you do the fine, you close the factories. But the other thing that I found very, very important in the coming future is to use the soft power, right? You release the data and let the people decide what product you're going to buy, who you want to support. Because I think business, they need, like Kun Machun mentioned, right? Civil society, once they know who is a polluter, they likely won't support the products, So I think the soft power will become much more important, especially when you have the political mandate. People care about their health, the health of their kids, So I think releasing data is very, very important. And I think we will start implementing open Bangkok, releasing data and to show the people. So I think in the future, the soft power will be the key success factor for solving this the PM 2.5 problem in Bangkok.
Thank you so much. Can I just add a little bit more to what you've said, which is amazing, Ajahn Chachat? Yes, and I think that I think it marries what Marjun was sharing and exactly what you were sharing too. In this specific citizen-driven clean air legislation that we're trying to table, it exactly does that. What it does, it actually it builds economic incentive structures in there, right? So as a consumer, right, the way you make a decision, one of the important critical factors is the pricing. Right. And so what it does is for operators who are not willing and that want to continue on their brown operations, they won't be given a leg up. But they'll be subject to a higher some kind of a carbon tax. But for those who are, we have a clean air fund, and specifically that is to support people, companies, industries who want to green their operation. These things are costly. We are aware of that. And that is one of the use of something like this. So this is specifically built in and will marry what you're saying exactly to help transition through, to help people transition. As Marjun was saying, you end up having an edge because this transition into the world of sustainability is not a fad. And so I just wanted to add on to that.
Okay. Thank you, Khun Vinarin. Very good.
Thank you, Pibina. Yes, and this is really also just about future-proofing Thai businesses. This is about making sure that globally, that Thai businesses will still be able to be a part of the value chain. Also, like what Majum was saying, as manufacturing is moving to Southeast Asia, we want to make sure that ESG profile is being met. And in order to be met, you at least have to have the data, and then you can start working towards brown to green, just like Pibina was saying. Does anyone else have any other questions?
I think I saw the questions in the message in the chat. Hello?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Yeah. Hello?
Sure. Oh, I think we lost Majun again.
Hello.
Hello?
Any question?
Yeah. I guess it's a very short time. If no one does, I might just jump in really quickly.
Yeah.
The BMA has 50 air monitoring stations at Ajahn Chachat. Yeah. And I understand that there's still a lot of areas to try to improve it to ensure that it does monitor all 6 pollutants. Is that also part of the plan as well, to ensure that the 50 stations are going to be, more actively involved in the monitoring?
And I try to include more the private sensors, and include maybe up to 1,000, but including all the like Chulalongkorn, they have maybe 400 sensors now, and I think there are many other private sectors sensors. So similar to Taiwan, that they include maybe thousands of sensors and then create a more accurate report of the PM 2.5 situation. So we plan to have a better detection, and also hopefully we can have a better prediction too. I think with all the wind and then all the technology, hopefully we can predict better so people can prepare themselves accordingly. Maybe we can announce the low emission zone just maybe 2 or 3 hours before the PM 2.5 arrive, hopefully, and then we can maybe help improve the situation in Bangkok. Yeah. And also we decided to set up a group called the PM 2.5 Detective. Right, maybe creating the group of the academic, maybe researchers from different universities, and try to do the long-term research on what are the sources of the PM 2.5 in Bangkok. So if we have continuous data, so I think we can tackle the sources of the PM 2.5 better. So I think we will launch this in one of our policy, and we have talked to some professors in universities already about starting the research program on this.
Oh, that's fantastic. And I know we're very short on time. Just to share before you have to leave, Ajahn Chachat, I guess I speak on behalf of what's happened in northern Thailand. And as you know, the situation is so dire to the point where, people from Chiang Mai sometimes come to Bangkok for better air quality, right? Which is crazy. But what anecdotally though, and from a public health perspective, I've been hearing medical doctors up north talking about how they're starting to see signs of unusual growth in the lungs of children about 14 years old. And that period, that age actually coincides with when the air pollution has been the worst in Chiang Mai and in northern Thailand. And I think that really hones down the point that this is about public health at the end of the day, right? I mean, whoever you are, You know, this is the future of Thailand, and when their health is being affected, I mean, this is how dire it is. And I won't want to monopolize time beyond this, but Mac, sorry,
I want to add that it's everything, you know. It's the survival of the cities too, you know, because city is the key thing. We have to attract people. We have to attract talents, right? I mean, if you have air pollution, nobody comes, and in the future, cities will die, right? So I think no matter how much it costs you to improve it, you have to invest in it. Because there are no other ways around. Yeah.
Thank you very much, Ajahn Chatchat.
I have to leave now. Sorry so much.
Ajahn Chatchat, there are questions in the chat. Would you mind if we send an email with these questions to your team?
Yeah.
Is that okay? Thank you very much. Thank you so much for your time.
Good night.
Today.
And Kun Machun, are you in China now or are you in Bangkok?
Sorry, I'm in Beijing.
Oh, okay. When you come to Bangkok, please drop by the city hall, okay? So we can have a long talk about your implementation plan. And I would love to learn from you. And Kun Saranan, okay, drop by, okay? We can talk about the ecosystem for the EV vehicles. Okay. ครับคุณวีนาครับขอบคุณครับ Thank you คุณแม็ก everyone
ขอบคุณค่ะอาจารย์ค่ะ
Thank you Governor.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Well, that was very nice for him to stay 1 minute past his next meeting. Well, that's wonderful. There are some questions in the chat if we wanted to take a stab at them, or we could certainly also have a conversation. But there's one question for Kun Earth, which is about the full value chain of your batteries. So it's what is eTran going to do with disposing of the batteries when they're not in use? So they've cycled, upcycled.
Yes, thanks for the question. I think that's a global problem. I mean, that's interesting. Like in Europe, for example, they have the alliance called the European Battery Alliance, or we can call EBA. They bring all the manufacturers of cars, automotive companies, researchers, academics, and recycle everyone put together in the ecosystem called European Battery Alliance to actually find the way, you know, to deal with the battery in an afterlife situation. So right now we can see some of the ideas, you know, from second life, from electric vehicles to be something like for example, like Tesla, they have a power wall, right? So that's how the idea of second life battery will be used. And in eTran, we plan to convert those batteries into the solar panel storage. I think now it's time to reconsider how we can, you know, reduce the use of the energy, because now the energy issue is a new global issue. Some countries are stopped producing already, and in Thailand, the electricity fee will be getting more higher. So people will install more of solar panel at the home, at the office, at the factory, for example. But to invest in the battery is quite, you know, double of the cost of the solar panels. So I think all EV second life batteries, for the quick win, we should consider put into the energy storage for the solar panels. Right now we are testing. It will have some modification because the specification of the battery that used in electric vehicles and the specification that require for store solar panel is a bit different, but it's not impossible. It's possible and it must, because right now we don't have a recycle technology here in Thailand. So to repurpose it first, I think that would be the best solution for today. And second, I think it should not just, you know, to store the battery in cities, but it should, you know, try to study of the off-grid options for the people who live in far countries, in the forest, that not connect to the grid. I think that battery will help save a lot of costs in terms of, you know, putting the power lines into the house compared to set up the solar cells and second life EV battery. It will reduce a lot of costs, and for sure it would connect the technology into their house as well. As one of SDG from United Nations, I think the clean energy must be affordable, accessible for all. And I think this will be the trigger point that we can bring in the clean energy into the house in an affordable price.
Thank you so much. Yeah, it is an issue for most people that are working in EVs to figure out what to do with the batteries or the mining that goes into the batteries. Like I feel for you, but it's important. It's an important question because it does have to be solved eventually. But I do think this is a nice quick win solution. It does have that extra benefit of having clean and affordable energy brought to people's homes. So thank you for that answer. I do have one more question. Sorry, Pibina.
Sorry, I was just wondering if it's okay to just quickly jump in and ask Majun, because Majun has a wealth of experience in terms of dealing with different stakeholders. I had provided a sort of a documentation that shows the very interesting regulatory framework here in Thailand in terms of dealing with air pollution. Just wanted to really gain from your wealth of experience. Do you see some of the success factors that have managed to push China forward on the environmental front? Are there impediments, or do you see similarities as to how we could also achieve a similar path?
Sure. Yeah. Thank you, Villarin. I'm very, very impressed when you have submitted, this draft of the legislation. And in China, we're also being involved in some of the legislative process. And when we amend the basic law, China's environmental protection law, for example, that was a 4-year long process, and then we try to make intervention. The original suggestion is just to raise the penalty fines, but when the local agency, even some of the local officials, they put GDP growth ahead of environmental protection, so they give the protection to the polluters, who is a major taxpayers. So they don't want to penalize them. So give them more power to penalize. Simply means that they probably you encourage more rent seeking, basically. So that's not enough. So we continue to suggest that we need to make sure it's open, to the being monitored, and then all this must be made transparent. So we're very, very happy to see eventually, toward the end of that process, a chapter 5 have been created, titled Transparency, Environmental Transparency and Public Participation. This is the first ever legislation in China that ever have such a kind of a special chapter titled Public, Transparency and Public Participation. You can imagine transparency is not part of the DNA of our culture, of our governance. But on the environment side, I think there's so much consensus have been made, and it's for public good. And eventually, I think this, when we got the transparency, then it triggered all these follow-up actions. When people understand how bad it is, in the first month of monitoring of PM 2.5, I still remember Beijing's PM 2.5 monthly average shoot above 120, the WHO standards at that time is 10. Now it dropped to 5. So people, they really got annoyed, and they it's not enough just to know which day to put down face mask or lock their children indoor. They want to know the solution. So it support the government to come up with very tough national clean air action plan. So from 2013 to 2017, managed to drop from 90 annual, average from 90 micrograms to 60. In Beijing, we got 58 that year. And then from 58, after 3 years of the blue sky, we call it blue sky battle, and then it dropped to 38, and last year 33. This year it's 32 at this moment. So basically, I think legislation is very important, but the transparency can help to facilitate a broad range of participation, not just from the people. As governors put it, it's also the government. The people can use their power. You can use the power as citizens to supervise. You can also use your power as consumers to not to choose those brands which wouldn't want to grain their supply chain. So I think so many major brands have also sourced in ASEAN countries now, and they build their supply chain base there. So I think you can hold them accountable. In China, we have suffered from that, and now they turn to be a positive force to drive the entire supply chain, to measure, not just to comply with the national standards, but go beyond that to measure and set their own annual target for emission reduction. So I think you can hold them accountable, the multinationals sourcing from Thailand. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that answer, Jun. I actually have another question from the audience, from one of the comments that I think was directed more towards Ajahn Chachat, but I think that we might be able to play with it in this group too. So the question reads, a major source of pollution in Thailand in general are the coal power plants, which have been generating massive excess electricity, but they're quite large polluters. And so to stop this major source of pollution, how do the panelists plan to engage with EGAT, the MEA, PEA to make more sustainable and less polluting electricity mix? But I also think that maybe, Majun, is this something that you have dealt with in China, is the greening of the coal-fired power plants?
Yeah, China is highly dependent on coal. I'm not sure about the percentage in proportion in Thai, but in China, after such a massive investment on renewables, coal power still account for 58% of our power generation. So coal power used to be the source of not just climate, greenhouse gases, but local emission, all kind of local emissions. It's a major source. But through all these years, I think one of the major breakthrough is to through all this new legislation, and also through all this transparent monitoring and penalty fines, and all this have been made transparent. The coal power have really most of them not just installed all these scrubbers and to try to get rid of sulfur and then nitrogen and then particles, but also they have now been required to go the so-called ultra clean. That is to drop the to vastly reduce their to reduce their level of emission, which in comparison with the level in Europe or in America, it's only a fraction of that. So massive investments have been made, I have to acknowledge. So at this moment, when climate change have been, when we factor in the climate change factor, then whether it makes sense just to drive them to put so much money on the clean coal, or we should try to, put more on the renewable, or just to make them more flexible. That's the debate and discussion, so that they can help to absorb those intermittent power generated by the renewable, like solar and wind. That's the debate and discussion.
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, that is quite a balancing act to have to deal with, of do you want these pollutants in the environment, but then also it's like this climate issue, and it's really, clean coal is quite it's not clean when we consider it in the whole grand scheme of climate change. Thank you. Are there any other questions from panelists?
Yeah, I'm very also, so glad to see Yitran, the Sonoran, created this. In China, we also, our e-vehicle business is also thriving, because of the government, have a policy to really encourage that to happen. And of course, in the meantime, when it comes to e-motor vehicles, a lot of charging situation, as you said, charging at home is not quite safe. So, and there's a lot of safety issues there. So how to build the infrastructure, it's a challenge. It's quite challenging. E-vehicles in general have that challenge, but e-bikes and e-motors, I think they're also this challenge. So who will be responsible to build this, like the charging station, as you
Well, right now I think it's a collaboration between enterprise like us and also the government like MEA or PEA. First of all, I think the government now they think that this station is a station. It's like you build a house and you ask for the electricity to the house, something like that. But there are some room to improve. For example, right now, people who install the 4-wheelers EV chargers, they will got discount electricity fees, say from like 4 baht to 2.6 baht, for example. But the infrastructure that we built, actually we charge electric vehicles too, but it's 2-wheelers, and we still being charged by the normal rate, not a discount rate for the EV charging. So if they can reduce the cost, that will be, allows we can provide the better price and cost to the customer as well.
Second, for the company side, I think we are investing by our own. Right, I think like PTT, they have like 100 stations in this year. Few other brands is getting up to 50 stations, and we are 50 stations. But the point is they're not, they cannot use together. Each brand has different size and technologies. So it seems like it's impossible to have a universal battery swapping station for all, because different design, different technologies and things like that. So it's a kind of difficulties. But we have some research teams are working on the universal batteries in Thailand. But the challenge is we are not much R&D or brand in Thailand, so it's about economy of scale. We are super on the early stage of our locally R&D team like Yitran, not like in Europe that all the big brand, or in Japan that they're all the big brand. But it's not impossible to have a universal battery. So the investor, maybe energy company, they might be get easy for them to make a decision to invest in a battery swapping station. So in the world, the leading brand of swapping station, we will say Gogoro from Taiwan. That is the best case, because the Taiwanese government also support in battery, so that their cost on investment at the station is much cheaper than Thailand. And Thailand, looking back to EV 2-wheelers, it's always behind 4-wheelers. For example, like a policy of say tax, for example, import tax, for example, a 4-wheeler gets a lot of discount and zero income tax on some parts, but 2-wheelers we still not yet still not there. So we just we need to pay like 40% import tax, like, which is incredible, not making any sense. but for four-wheelers, that's zeros or 10 already. So I think now the company like us are moving like to get the advantage of the first mover, to try our best to reduce the carbon at every day, every hour, as much as possible. And we're looking to have some government partnership, which allow us to, maybe set up the station at their area and the park in the building of the BMA, things there to make it easy for customer to use the ecosystem as well. It's still early, but it's coming.
Thank you for this. I would like to say, some of the audience raised questions about the vehicle emissions, really a primary source. We used to have that as well. So, but in China, we spent so much money to raise the standards to Euro 6 equivalents. And you can imagine, to try to upgrade the fuel, to that level, and then transform all the vehicles to be compatible with that. It costs a lot of money. So whether it makes sense to do that, or it's make better sense for the government to put money, to build all this infrastructure for e-vehicles. Of course, the source of the of the electricity is also an issue. If it's all based on coal power, then it's less green. So there's a lot of challenges. And on the mineral set, and I really hope that your drive for a transparency, could be successful, because with this, because as you put it, the technology is there. The platform is there. The solution is obviously quite there already. It's not just in China. I just see India also launched their own online monitoring platform, and Vietnam have just approached, and they expressed their interest in this all this monitoring. And then on the monitoring side, all this using drones or using the remote sensing and satellite imaging and sensing. There's a lot of possibility to all kind of different way of, acquiring to get all this data. And then it's not just the government, as I put it, the major brands can be also held accountable to try to motivate their suppliers to install all this monitoring themselves. I think they have the interest to do that. Quite some of them have expressed their willingness to do that, the brands, but they also need the government to be on their side. The government wouldn't say this is not unfair or some things like that. So I really hope that you can be successful.
Thank you so much, Majun. And goes to your point. I mean, that is exactly what we've drafted into this legislation, which is the framework for doing that, right? Because as private operators, you can only go so far. I mean, policies should be there to be supportive of companies wanting to transition in the right way. And as you rightfully said, a lot of the higher end markets for exporters in Thailand are the ones, it would be in Europe and the US. And the legislation coming down the pipe from those regions are very clear in terms of companies needing to be very accountable in terms of their supply chain, showing that they are moving towards a much greener processes in terms of their production processes. So I think there is a strong business imperative, and what we're trying to do, what we're doing here with this legislation is actually giving the leg up to those who want to transition. Right. So issues that Kun Earth had mentioned, right? Issues about two-wheelers not getting as much an up as four-wheelers. And in Thailand, there are some very basic problems. For example, even with four-wheelers, as you know, Kun Earth, the older your car is, the cheaper the tax goes. Which is counterintuitive, from an emission standpoint, right? It shouldn't be that way, and there, right? So there are some easy wins that you can do. It's just making it in a way that incentivizes economic players in the right way. Yeah, and I think it's a little bit unfortunate that as a citizen group, we've not been able to articulate this as far and wide as possible, specifically to business groups about this, because I think as soon as some businesses hear the word law, they think, oh my God, command and control, increasing my cost of doing business, right? And that's all they think about. But it's no. I mean, this is building incentive structure. Whatever legislation out there that you're going to be slapped with because you're not meeting guidelines, those stay as they are. In fact, in this legislation, that really the only add-on that we've included is actually on transboundary haze. And that's the only area right now that is not covered anywhere. And it's really difficult because it's outside our jurisdiction. However, if there's health impact in Thailand caused by transboundary haze, the onus shifts to the producer who's, and we use satellite data to catch that, and we use, wind data and all that, and say, okay, it's coming from X area. Now, as a producer in that area, please show that it's not your production. So it pushes the burden back on you to say, okay, I have supply traceability, and I can tell you that's not my production, and that's fine, right? There's nothing to worry about. But it's those who don't have that in place, and it's not just for this, but actually going forward in your own business to sell into the higher value markets, you need this anyway. So it is helping the transition process in this area. So that's what we've been trying to do, and we just don't have the capacity to articulate this through. And I think the other counterfactual too, Majun, for anybody who's really, really afraid about something like this, if it's that scary, I think all businesses in China would have gone bust by now. Right?
Yeah.
Right.
That's exactly, at the beginning, they also claim that this is going to add too much cost and, things. And the government also very, very concerned about social stability impact. They worry that if they give the data to the public, then it could arouse public incidents. But in fact, the opposite is true. The reason that they gradually, give more recognition to this, and even our Ministry of Ecology and Environment even embrace this because they can see that this actually helped to mobilize the public behind them. Before it's kind of the public always kind of in some way think that the agency is on the side with the corporation, with the polluters. But when the data is all made public, they understand that the only enemy is not even the factory, but the pollution itself. We should all work together if they're to create a leveled playing field, basically. Otherwise the whole mechanism of the market going to reward those who pollution, and then more of this factory is going to cut corners to win the contract. I mean, or to win the bank loans or the investment. This is not right. This is not a good market without transparency. So I think eventually, when there's a level playing field, then it's just fair. It's fair to everyone, and it doesn't cure our business. Actually, China have gone through massive growth, in that period of time, basically.
Oh, that's fantastic. I know I've got a minute left, so could I just take that last minute to maybe just give an update of where things stand on the Thai legislation quickly, Mac? Is that all right?
Yeah. Well, and I also, if you could add, Pibina, is how would you want the companies that might eventually see this or get interested in clean air? How can they get involved even after the legislation or in conjunction with it? Thank you.
Great, thank you so much. So really quickly right now, so the draft legislation currently sits in Parliament. It has been deemed as a finance-related legislation. That gets a little complicated. Basically, if you use one satang of public funds in any sort of way, it is deemed a finance-related legislation, even though here it doesn't actually technically affect the government coffers because it's additional tax on exercise tax, which is not part of the existing budgetary space anyway, but in any event. So therefore, it's now with the Prime Minister to take a decision. He can unilaterally decide whether to on-forward it to Parliament for deliberation or to kill it outright. And it doesn't look too good right now. It looks like it may be killed outright, which is not great for our collective health at all. Right now, so tomorrow is a big day because we're actually going to be submitting a communique to explain to our policymakers and Prime Minister specifically on the rationale as to why this is a win-win-win, right? Because really, there is no us or them when it comes to the air you breathe. I mean, there really isn't, right? And it's just trying to find solution that works for everybody. And so we're trying to table that and say, well, at least give this a shot at being discussed, because right now there's another legislation out there. It is drafted by big business, and it's a lot more command and control, and the fines in there is too low to really incentivize any kind of change. So it is unfortunate. And therefore, we're trying to say, hey, why don't just discuss all the legislation, put it out there, the pros and cons, so that this country gets the best legislation to protect our air. As for your question, Mac, as to, I think businesses, I would strongly encourage anybody who's interested to actually read the legislation. We have it in Thai, we've translated into English for anybody who isn't a Thai reader. Also, we have short videos, we have summaries. I mean, whatever way you understand material, we have it out there. It's all on our website called thailandcan.org. Very easy way to remember this name, just because I completely leverage off President Obama, right? Yes, we can campaign. So the CAN stands for Clean Air Network. So thailandcan.org. That's all you've got to remember. Go there. Everything is in there. All the calls to action. If you want to be part, provide. Right now, this legislation is open for public consultation. It closes on 10th of July. All Thais can go in and give your views on this. 6 questions, watch this 3-minute video. It will be the prime of you to answer those questions, right? Tomorrow, we're submitting a communique straight to the government. Follow us, see what's happening there, share the links. There'll be a Facebook Live on that. We've got a campaign running now for 4 years. There's about 46,000 people who've signed up. There's 70 million people who breathe air in this country. So, 1 million would be nice, right? Yeah, there are lots of things you can do. You can hashtag, do not reject this Clean Air Act in Thai. It's Yapat Tok Phalaba Akat Sa'at, right? Just to express to the government that this is what people want. Last final point is that in 2018, when things got bad in Thailand, people started complaining because people realized something's wrong. People falling sick badly, and they knew it was air pollution. So they started complaining through social media. And with that, what happened was suddenly PM 2.5 data that was never included in our air quality index, and there were never sufficient monitoring stations to monitor it. Suddenly, within 8 months, it was resolved. Wow. This is the power of people standing up. So that's the message I want to leave everybody with, because it is about all of us. Yeah, Mag. Sorry, we're a couple minutes over time, so I'll throw it back to you.
Don't be sorry at all. And honestly, I don't think that I want to end it with anything other than what you just said. So thank you all so very much for coming out today. And thank you, Majun and Kun Earth, for being a part of this panel. This has been absolutely lovely. And I think that a lot of really wonderful win-win collaborations are going to be coming out of this conversation. So thank you all so very much. We'll certainly be in touch.